My first thought as I hit the ground was, I didn't think I was going to die like this today.
Respond to a grass fire 293 and 136.
Just a normal day at the station, high winds, high fire danger. Had all our gear ready to go and everything. About 2 o'clock or so, we got a call to go out to Highway 293 and 136, which is what we call the Fritch Highway. And we staged up right at 293. My driver was Philip Luna at the time, so it was me and Philip jumped in the truck, kind of excited, pumped up to go, so we headed out. When we first headed out there, it was sunshine. It felt good, except for the wind. And as we're getting geared up and getting ready, I noticed that it was like dark now, like storm clouds had rolled in. Now all of a sudden there's no sunshine.
We had more than one fire coming our direction. The wind was coming in the direction we were.
It just had that eerie feeling like a storm was rolling in.
We were gonna set up in front of the fire and try to burn out off the road and stop the fire with a burnout.
Brian's truck was on brush 4, which was this one, was behind us about 100 feet. I could see him back there.
I'm putting on my respirator. I already have most of my wildland gear on, and I have a fire shelter with me.
I noticed he was putting all his gear on. A lot of times on fires, we don't always wear an APR and stuff. And I just noticed that he was putting everything on, from his APR, his hood and everything. And I thought, man, if he's doing it, I better get my gear on, because there's some reason he's feeling that this is going to be bigger than it is.
I was in brush 4. Danny and Philip were in brush 3. And we just pulled up behind them there, and the guy from Fritch, he was off in the ditch trying to get the torch lit, the drip torch.
But the wind was blowing so bad that they couldn't light the torches. They kept going out. And we're waiting and waiting and waiting for them to get lit. And as they're standing there, we can start to see flames crossing the road. And I look back and those guys are gone. They realized that it was too far. There's no way they were gonna get their torches lit or even start a back burn, so they bailed out.
Brush 3 was right in front of us, and we started right behind them. My thought was I could kind of get up in an echelon with them on their right side about their 5 o'clock.
When we staged up, my truck, if you visualize it right here, this is the grass field for thousands of acres that was nothing but tall grass, probably a couple feet tall. The asphalt was pretty much right here, and this is where the truck was. I was sitting right here with this nozzle in my hands.
We could see smoke coming up over the horizon. The visibility was bad anyway because of all the wind and the dirt.
The fires looked like they're pretty intense. You could tell by the plumes and how dark the smoke was.
The winds were shifted, and the thing just hit us from the side. And I heard them haul the radio, back out, back out.
Johnson, y'all are going to get cut off. You've got fire coming up hard behind you. Just cross 136 where I'm at.
The wind was so intense and the heat was so intense.
I could start seeing the fire run, and within a split second, it went from way out there to hitting the highway at such force.
And I looked up, and the fire was like right there. All the way into your chest, it was roaring. The wind was blowing.
The flames are going all the way across the road now.
And it was literally like somebody punched me in the face. I was standing up here, I turned with my nozzle like that, and next thing I know, all I seen was fire hitting me in the face. And between the fire, the wind, and probably the smoke, it just literally like getting punched.
I could see his truck because he was right there, but I couldn't see the actual road. The flame was shooting sideways, and the whole ground was covered with fire.
My first thought was lay back on the catwalk, turn my nozzle, which is just what we call straight stream. When you're fighting a fire, you're holding the nozzle this way, what they call right to fight, left to life. You immediately spin your nozzle all the way to the left. It gives you a fog stream for protection. I immediately did that and laid back and just had the stream spraying on me. At this point, just to kind of visualize time frame, all this could have taken part in 10 to 15 seconds. I felt like I was back here for 10 minutes doing this. These doors right here, which are now solid plated, were not plated. This was just what we call expandable metal. It was completely open. Underneath now has a plate on the bottom, was completely open. So with me standing here and the grass burning right here, there was literally nothing protecting me from the flames other than the gear I had on. So I'm sitting here getting hot. So my first thought is, why don't I reach across? There's a second hose on the other side. 2 hoses has got to be better than 1 hose. So I'm laid back here. I'm deciding I'm going to slide it across and go ahead and grab the other hose so I can have 2 hoses. Well, I guess I misjudged. As I'm sliding, I mean, it's a pretty wide area, but as I'm sliding across, the next thing you know, I'm reaching up to grab the second hose. I'm holding, with my right hand, I'm holding the other hose. I'm reaching for the second. Next thing you know, I fall off the other side, which you can hear, this is the level of the catwalk about here, so you can see it's pretty far. I fall off into the other side. I don't go all the way down. I literally come back and hit this door on the other side. So I fall back, I hit my helmet on it, it pushes forward, my goggles come off. At this point, I have neither hose. So I do try to reach up. I still could not reach the hose laying there. And this whole time, I can just feel like I'm getting more hot, heated up. So I'm thinking to myself, I've got to do something. If I lay here, you know, this ain't gonna come out good if I stay laying here. So at that moment, all I remember was the next thing I know from that moment laying backwards is I am standing up on the other side of the truck in this area there, opening that door on the other side to step out.
Brian and I both saw it just completely engulfed in flames. We had pretty much, you know, at that point figured they were gone. You know, we thought they were gone, and I'm thinking we're next. You know, it's going to get us next. And I got Brian in the back.
I could see the other fire truck was in trouble. I could see that Danny Wheel was on the back of the truck, and the flames were intense, and
So I open the door and I jump off the truck. As I look right and left of the truck from the front to the back, all I could see was pretty much fire. I could just see yellow on both sides. It's a kind of thought you don't want to have, but you know, and don't know why I thought it, but it was just a thought when I jumped off. I thought, you know, I didn't think I was going to die here.
The back of the fire tank, it flashed into flames, and the smoke and the heat was so intense.
That image is burned in my head, and I'll never get rid of that.
Chief Knapp, which is our chief now, he was captain at the time. He did a grass fire class at one point, and it was a class about, in Dumas, they had a truck in the middle of the field that got broke down, and their two guys left the truck and went on foot and ended up burning up and dying. And so for a split second, for some reason, this Captain Knapp popped in my head, and all I could see was his face telling me, get in the truck, stay with the truck. One little snippet of what he said in that class, you know, saved my life that day. So a lot of times we take training for granted, I think, even the simple training that can end up saving your life when necessary. And the next thing I tell myself, I just said jump. And when I did, I don't even remember waiting for the window to go down. All I remember seeing the crack, I said jump. Next thing I know, I was leaping and going through the window on the other side. As I'm going through the window in midair, as I'm going through, I turn myself around because I'm going head first. I spin myself around and I land in the seat with my butt in the seat, and then there's a radio console in the middle, and then I land with my back against the radios, and my feet are hanging out the window. I immediately look at my feet for some reason and tell myself, you idiot, get your feet get in the truck. So I immediately pull my feet in and I set up straight in the truck, and I go for the window and roll the window up. At this same point, all this is going on, I'm starting to scream at Luna because my first thought was, if my first thought is if my jacket is on fire and I jump in and light this truck on the inside of the truck on fire, I'm going to kill both of us in an instant. So I immediately start screaming for Luna, am I on fire, am I on fire? He starts screaming back. He said later, he was like, he thought I was crazy, like, why are you yelling? And he said he started patting my back, and he's like, no, you're not on fire, you're fine. So kind of in a panic mode, I'm trying to calm down. I start throwing my helmet off, I throw my APR off, and I just start yelling at him, get out of here, let's go, let's go. Later we had found out when he had started back up, the fire had burned the air lines on the truck and had locked down the air brakes. So we couldn't move, and that's what made us stuck in the field. So the whole time he's been fighting this to get the truck to move. So we probably backed up maybe 20, 30 feet the whole time I was back here dealing with this. So he finally gets the truck, he gets in gear for whatever reason. The truck starts to move and we start creeping out of the fire. So I immediately get on the radio report that, you know, we've been burned over, we're leaving on the north side of the fire. I've been burned, but we're okay, we're on the north side. My chief, Chief Johnson, they had driven through the fire and through the smoke to get over to our side once they heard the radio traffic. He shows up there, starts trying to check me out. We get in the truck, drive over the ambulance, they get me in the back, put me in the cot. Kind of a funny fact at the end, I knew the directions we were going and where we needed to go to get back to the highway. They turned on a dirt road and start driving down a dirt road. Well, I'm in the back, the paramedics looking out the window talking about how the fire is going, and in my mind, I'm already seeing that we're driving right back to the fire. I hear the driver turn around and says, "Oh man, this is a dead end road, we can't go." So my first thought sitting in the back of this truck is that, you know, here I just got out of the fire and I'm gonna get freaking burned up in the back end of an ambulance after this. So I was about ready to jump out of that truck and start running for it. So anyway, they get turned around, long story short, they catch the road, we go the long way around and we get to the hospital.
Everybody, I think, takes the wildland world for granted unless they live in our environment. Firefighters in the Texas Panhandle understand what we're getting into on the severe weather days. An incident like this reinforces our need to keep training, to keep pounded into everybody's heads that you've got to take all the extra precautions and you've got to keep your head on the swivel because it can come from anywhere. Our little incident was just one part of a massive incident going on that day. Our training, we try to reflect what we're going to get into in the real world. And we work a lot with our mutual aid partners. We've done some training with the Panhandle Fire Department. We've done training with Washburn Fire Department because at any given time, we're either relying on them to help us or they're relying on us to help them. Especially in the March, April timeframe in our area. This is our fire weather season. We work closely with the National Weather Service. We work closely here at Pantex with the Pantex meteorologist, Steve Kirsch. He's a valuable resource for us. We'll start looking at the weather forecast, specifically the fire weather forecast. On days like today, where we're in extremely critical fire weather conditions, we use that forecast and the information that's available to us from the Weather Service and from Steve Kirsch to help predict whether we're going to need to hold extra people. And on days like today, where we're in the extremely critical fire weather days, we hold extra staffing just in case. I mean, I hope that we never have to use those extra firefighters. Our number one mission, our number one priority is the firefighter safety, the civilian safety of everybody that we protect, and then the places and the things at Pantex. So we use the weather forecast to give us a baseline of what we can expect and whether we need to hold extra people. The fires in this case on our event, the fire took on its own weather pattern. It made its own weather. It started to create its own cloud. It made what they call a pyrocumulus cloud. The thermal column became so intense for the updrafts off of this fire. When the fire built to a head, minutes before the burnover event, the cloud had built as high as it could build, and it looks like a thunderstorm, and then it collapsed. And when a thunderstorm collapses, this is no different. When a thunderstorm collapses, all that energy drops. Caught them off guard when that cloud collapsed. So the fire weather conditions on these extreme days, it becomes a totally different world, and you've got to keep people on the outside looking in. The Weather Service watches those things on the radar, and they push out information to the firemen on the line. So the weather forecast and the coordination that we have between the guys in Amarillo at the National Weather Service, our guy here at Pantex, and the guys in the office in the fire station all look at the weather forecasting and all getting updates. It all comes together to help keep firefighters hopefully safe.
When you do this long enough, you know, you see different things, but there's always something. You know, there's always something that you haven't seen before. And that's, you know, you just add it to a database. And this is something that we talked about. If we were going to do it again, the only thing we could have changed if we would have got to that post earlier, you know, like 30 minutes earlier or 45 minutes earlier, and we had a sound strategy. It was moving, it was on us so fast, we didn't have time to implement that. And, you know, nobody's fault. It just, when we got the call, and we went.
Lessons learned, we kind of learned from the incident. You can kind of see from this truck that we ended up adding the plate to add protection between the driver underneath. Many times you could be driving over the black, you could see flames, fire, sparks underneath you. And of course here you can see if the fire's right here, the fire's gonna go straight through. The other thing I tell guys is, you know, we check our equipment every day. We always check things, but sometimes we take things for granted. You know, I've practiced all the way from the academy. You know, we learned early on about right to fight, left for life on the fog nozzle. You know, the fog's supposed to save you. Well, this one also has gallons per minute. You know, I could have upped the water source. You know, I don't have any explanation. I have no proof that if going from 13 gallons to 60 gallons would have saved me any heat, and I could have just laid there. But it was an option. It was an option I should have trained in my head. You know, I've always trained in my head. If I have this nozzle in my hand, for some reason I always spin it from right to left just to do it, just to know it's a natural reaction. But I've never done that with the gallons per minute knob. It was something now that I make sure I know is there. You know, pay attention, know it's there. Something I reiterate with guys is that with my incident, you know, you might not think your actions mean much, but when I looked over at Brian, for whatever reason, Brian was putting all his gear on. You know, I always tell guys, whatever your actions are, you might think you're silly at the time, you might think you're doing the wrong thing or whatever, but you could end up doing the right thing. That could end up saving somebody's life. His actions obviously saved me from being burned, you know, if not killed, you know, after all.
One thing I would say is that, you know, they say you get that feeling that something's not right, and you should listen to it.